Hello viewers, now let us see the various characteristics of population and how that is going to affect behavior called demography. In this lesson, we are going to see what is population psychology or the trends in population, then we will go on to population explosion, then we will see density and its impact on human behavior and environment, and we will also finally see how small families or how to motivate small families. Let us begin with the psychology of population, that is how populations grow. Populations do not grow in a linear fashion. There are various trends of population growth. Initially, they will slowly increase to such an extent where there will be population explosion. And when the population of any species increases to a great extent, then something called as reactance happens and there will be again slow degradation of the population. So, usually growth of population happens like a J curve, and initially the population growth will be lower, that is the growth rate of population will be lower because the reproducing members of that population will be lesser. But as population keeps on increasing, the reproducing members of the population will also be increasing, and so the growth rate will be much higher eventually, reaching to a peak. Different trends in population growth rate are observed in different species of this world. For example, if we take bacteria growth, if the environmental factors are conducive, there will be a sudden growth rate because life rate of bacteria or the lifespan of bacteria is lower, but however the reproducive capacities are much higher. So, suddenly we might see some millions of bacteria, but as soon as the environmental resources get depleted because of their increasing numbers, suddenly we will find that the bacteria has been erased, all of them have died. So, compared with these microorganisms, the population growth rate is quite different as we look at higher order animals. Coming to humans, in human beings the lifespan is higher and the growth rate is not as intense as in other lower animals or microorganisms. Here human beings live for a relatively long period of time, but their maturity levels also take a long period of time. So, once the child is born, it will take something like 18 or 20 years for them to reach reproductive levels as per today's world cultural situation, or sometimes there are many individuals who do not bear children even after they have crossed their 30s. So, the growth rate depends on the kind of species and it varies from animal to animal kingdom. Compared with other animals, human growth rate is influenced by many more factors because humans tend to have control over their environment. For example, we have eradicated smallpox, and because of scientific and technological and medical advancements, today the life expectancy rate has increased, infant mortality rate has decreased, and we have also tried by the help of agricultural and industrial revolution producing more food and other resources for ourselves. So, the psychology of population growth when it comes to human beings is certainly different because of all these factors. But however, initially any kind of population grows slowly and the curve will be like J shaped. but after some kind of stability is attained, we can observe an S-shaped curve. So, now let us look at how these curves are actually shown. Here you can see that initially it is slowly rising up and almost giving an indication like it is a J curve, and after the carrying capacity is reached. So, carrying capacity is the number of organisms of one species that an environment can support indefinitely. So, when a population is developing in an environment with resources, there is more development and the carrying capacity will be easily reached. But once the carrying capacity is reached, that is the population is at its highest, then there will be many other factors that are going to intervene, because once the population is very high, there will be lot of competition that will be developed, and the food constraints will be there, and also environmental, there will be lots of crowding of that population. And so what happens is the environment or nature by itself tries to regain equilibrium, and that is when you can see this S-shaped curve. So, initially after exponential growth, the nature by itself or in its nature, there is what we call as an efforts to attain equilibrium again, and then the population is stabilized. Now, in order to understand population explosion, we need to understand some technical terms like what is growth rate, which is usually represented by small r, what is birth rate, which is represented by small b, and also what is death rate, that is represented by small d. Now, coming on to define what is growth rate. Growth rate is the change in the population size per individual over some time interval. So, to the equation that is given for growth rate is equal to birth rate minus death rate. Now, birth rate is the average number of births per individuals per unit time. So, it means for a particular period of time, the average number of individuals who are born during that time, that is the birth rate. Coming on to death rate, similarly it is the average number of individuals who had died per unit time. So, there will be population explosion when certainly the birth rate is much higher than the death rate. So, population explosion usually occurs when there is the J curve, and it means that all the environmental factors are conducive for the growth of this particular species. So, regarding the availability of food, regarding the availability of air, water and other essential nutrients are very much abundant in the environment, and so we will see exponential growth or population explosion. But after a period of time, once these resources get utilized by that particular species, then again the death rates start increasing, and so there will be again a sort of equilibrium that is attained by the nature. Now, let us see population explosion with regard to human population. Now, in the last few centuries, there is population explosion that is seen, and we have seen that this trend has initially been seen in all developed countries. So, initially in all developed countries, because many resources are abundantly available to them, there is this population explosion. But over a period of time, they started stabilizing their population, and now we see that it is in fact in the developing countries that there is population explosion. But when there is population explosion, there is something called as environmental resistance That is when nature tries to bring back or increase the death rates. Sometimes it might happen in a density related factors might influence, like scarcity of available resources like food, water and air, or sometimes environmental resistance can also happen by non-density related factors, like say a huge explosion or earthquakes or floods or landslides or cyclones, hurricanes. So all these factors also are a sort of environmental resistant measures in order to control the population. Human beings, we have, because of scientific and technological advancements, have tried to overcome both these kinds of environmental resistances. We tried to develop some measures by which we can resist density related resistance from nature. So we have, because of agricultural revolution, we are trying to produce more food for ourselves. Likewise, we have also found out various methods or invented several techniques to overcome non-density related reactants from the environment also. That is, for example, for earthquakes, we know that in Japan their number of earthquakes is really very high. It is earthquake prone. So what they have done, they have tried to build their environment in such a way that they will have minimal loss even when there is an earthquake. So because of these factors, in the last few centuries there is a population explosion with reference to humans. You can see in this graph very clearly the time span is from 12,000 years before Christ till the present 2000 AD. So here in the initial period, that is up to 5000 BC, you can see that because of cultural advancements, the human population has slowly begun to increase in sizes. After 5000 or 6000 BC or 8000 BC to be more specific, beginning from that time till the 19th or 18th century AD, because of agricultural developments, the human population began to grow in size. Probably it is the time when man began to not only hunt animals for food, but also tried to start some agricultural practices like growing some plants and things like that. So initially the cultural advancements and then the agricultural advancements helped population explosion when it comes to human beings. But now after beginning from 18th century or 19th century, because of industrial revolution, initially the population has exploded, and now because of scientific and medical advancement especially, the population has increased. So here you can see, because there is a population explosion, the J curve that is given here. Now let us see what are the psychological consequences of population explosion after trying to understand why there is population explosion. Now the immediate consequences of population explosion is an increase in slum dwellers, then the increase in competition, and also there is lots of crowding. Please have a look at this figure. Here you have seen that the population explosion results in these three consequences: competition, increase in slums and crowding. Now let us consider each. Because of competition, there is lot of frustration that develops, because every individual has his or her own needs. So they try to make all efforts to satisfy those needs. But because of scarcity of resources, some might achieve their needs, some may not achieve their needs and goals. So what happens is there will be lot of competition, and as a result those who do not win in this competition, they tend to get disheartened, and they finally it results in frustration, because we know that when a need is thwarted from being achieved, then the organism becomes frustrated. And because of this frustration, the aggression levels increase. So we will see lot of violence in the population. So because of this competition and because of the population explosion, violence, wars and other crimes keep on the increase. Apart from that, there will be lot of conflict that is developed, because hitherto when all resources are available satisfactorily to everyone, then the individual is happy, so the behavior also will be adaptable, will be supportive of others, the person can be understanding of others and can also be caring for others. But once there is competitiveness that is developed for these important resources, then what happens is hitherto nicely adjusting groups also will develop some sort of conflict within them. So all of us know that groups will perform best when there is a lot of cohesiveness. But if there is competition which is not healthy, then there will be lot of conflicts in group, and it results in dissatisfaction, and human beings being social animals, because they are not able to have socially satisfying relationships, they will get really anxious, stressed out, they will start developing many maladaptive tendencies, and then they might also finally lead to a mental breakdown. One of the very alarming and very highly focused upon problem that is we are facing today because of population explosion is development or the condition when many slums are being observed in the urban societies. This happens because many of the villagers, because of limited resources that are available to them, they are migrating into the towns and cities, and because these people cannot be accommodated in proper places, the development of slums is a present day situation. So in any city or any town today in India, we see lots of slums. So these slums, because there is no proper planning either housing wise nor availability of other important basic needs like water, food and other resources, because of that all the people who are living in these slums are challenged by various problems that they have to face, like they do not have enough space for each other, and we have seen very clearly that everyone needs some kind of personal space, and if anyone encroaches in that personal space, the human being by nature becomes very stressed, frustrated and also tries to use some violence to push out other people from that space. But in a slum situation, they have to have people continuously encroaching on their spaces. So as a result, lot of aggression is seen in them, and not only that, because of lack of proper resources that are available to them, there is lot of malnutrition that is seen, and the children, they are not able to grow up in a safe, healthy environment. Because of that, their intellectual capacities and capabilities are not developing to their full potential, and we see lot of incidents of mental retardation. And not only that, because of other stressors in their life like poverty and victimization and segregation and many other marginalization, they are exposed to many of these sorts of stresses, which is finally resulting in the development of mental diseases and disorders. So these are unplanned explosion of slums. Now let us see other important resulting factor because of a population explosion, that is crowding. So, the many research has lots of research has been done in the area of crowding, not only by Western psychologists, but even in India too lots of research has given so many findings that which indicate that crowding is not healthy either for physical development or for mental development. And many people, when they are in a crowd, they become more aggressive because their personal spaces are continuously being impinged upon. Because of that, they get aroused, and because of that they feel lot of anxiety and experience a sense of insecurity, and any small thing that happens that disturbs their attention or that disturbs their mental peace, they are going to flare up. So, we see that in crowds the nature of aggressiveness increases. So, any aggressiveness results in a lot of violence, which is again in turn results in not only the causing hurt or injuries to the people who are involved in the aggression scene. They may not be directly involving themselves in the fight, but even the onlookers around them also, they are exposed to high risk, they will be having high risk for violence or injury. So, it has been found that aggressiveness is on the increase when there is more crowding. And another thing that happens, psychologists try to investigate what actually happens. What is it that makes these people who are facing this problem of crowding more aggressive? And they had found that these people experience a particular state called as de-individuation. Because of the presence of mob around them, or because of the limited space that is available to these people, they are not in their usual self, but they become what we call as de-individuated. So, in this de-individuation, these people will lose their personality and they will lose touch with their sense of morality, and because of that they will do things that otherwise they will not be willing to do. So, that is why we find that in any kind of mass involved programs, suddenly people will behave in unpredictable manner. And if one person does something that is not overstimulating the other individuals, every one of them will follow suit. For example, in a political campaign situation, if one person tries to break the window glasses of a bus, now many others will follow suit, because the process of de-individuation happens, and these individuals are not in a state to think morally and responsibly at that period of time, and they are so much influenced by the behavior of others in that group, and they do not think what they are doing right or whether they are doing wrong. So, other aspects of crowding is debilitating physical resources, which will lead to taking lesser and lesser amount of quality and healthy food, especially in the lower section or lower economic status groups. Apart from this, crowding has also been found to affect the level of task performance. So, earlier we have seen that presence of others improves a particular task if the task is simple. But if we have to do something that is demanding lot of concentration and attention on us, then certainly the presence of others is going to be having a negative impact on the performance level. So, as a result, what happens is slowly the output will be decreased, the productivity will be hampered, and so it is going to have an effect on the economic level. Having an effect on the economics or the economic or income levels of the individual finally results in lower resources, and it eventually affects both the physical and the psychological health. So, crowding is going to have personal impact, societal impact, and also interpersonal impact. In India, Jain and Mishra did lot of research regarding crowding, and they had listed 4 important factors that have an influence on the person's behavior when they are placed in a situation of crowding. The first one they point out is that there is negative affect that is developed, and the people have loss of control because they do not know what is happening, and because neither the situation around them nor the people around them will be in their control, and because unpredictability will be high, and because of these reasons the person will lose control of the environment. And also there will be a feeling of what they call as congestion and disturbance, which eventually affects the psychological functioning and of the individual. We have seen how the adversely population explosion is affecting the current day society all world over. So, now let us see what measures can be taken to motivate people to have small family, especially in the context of our own country, India. As you all know, the population of India is very high, especially density of population is very high, and government is trying from many decades very rigorously to adopt measures to overcome the population explosion. And for that there are several government proposals or policies that have been put forth, and today we have something sort of a 2 children norm. Even even after government has stipulated a 2 children norm, even if the government has stipulated this 2 children norm, there are many families that are not or there are many families that are having more than 2 children. So, researchers, psychologists have tried to conduct surveys to see which type of individuals are able to follow having a small family norm, and which type of individuals are not actually following this. So, they found that there are 4 different types of individuals here. There are some people who have no knowledge about family planning in India, and that is why they are not following it. And the second group is there are some people who have knowledge, but they do not have right attitudes to adopt. And the third category is those who have knowledge, have right attitude, but somehow their behavior is not conducive, that is their behavior is not showing that they are following. And it is the fourth minor number of people who have knowledge, who have right attitudes, and who are following. So, the small family norm in India is taking its own time. And also let us see the summary of research results. They have found that lower social class urban men prefer a large family size than their wives. They have also found that rural men and women desire a large family size, and higher the education level and status of women, the lower is the desired family size. Traditionalism is associated with a higher family size norm. So, basing on these research findings, today psychologists are trying to adopt newer measures and mechanisms, and they are making many suggestions to the government keeping these results in view. For example, since they found women, if they are educated, the family size will be lower, so they are recommending more and more women be educated.